The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communications Station.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen in listening land, wherever you are. If you're in Chicago, if you are in the United States of America, if you are in any country in the world of the 60 countries we broadcast, which I will not tell you each one of them, we want to welcome you to the WVTC radio station and specifically to the Barge show. Good morning. Today, we are going to have a magnificent guest. I would love to think of some words that could describe her, really describe her attributes, her character, her personality, her work, and the marvelous impact that she's having on humanity. But I'm going to let her do that. I was just having a discussion with Dr. And we were talking about the stars. And I was saying that every human being that God makes is a star. We all shine. How do we know we shine? Because we're alive. We all have our moments. And we share those moments together. That's called humanity. But at night, if you look up into the wonderful constellation of stars that shine so bright, that give you such a wonderful feeling, ask the question, where do all of those stars go in the presence of light? Yet they're producing the light at night. So what happens is all of the beautiful stars in the constellation leave when the presence of one star is magnified, and that's the one that gets the attention. So that star that's magnified gets larger and larger at the presence of the dawn, the beginning of a brand new day. In the Bible, we hear the bright and the morning star. So that star that gets larger while the other stars fade becomes, when it fully matures, the sun. And the sun gives us light all the way up until the darkness comes again. Well, I know many stars that are in the constellation that I've come across and met and done work with in my life. Today, we're going to have a star that's going to bring us to the dawn. She is the bright and the morning star. So she's going to share with us her life in 3 dimensions: the past, the present, and the illuminating future. My guest today is no one other than Reverend Dr. Sheri Prentiss.
Don, you are, okay, when he was talking about stars and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm one of those ones that's shining at night. But then when he said that I am the sun, I'm like, how do you come up from behind that? That was an awesome introduction. I am so grateful that our paths had the opportunity to cross again and wasn't expecting it. And it's funny because when you and I reconnected, when I walked in the room, I thought, I know him. And he felt the same thing. But I, as a woman, I'm very careful. You go up to a man and say, have we met somewhere before? I didn't want to come across like that. So I just sat back and I kept trying to think about, where had I seen you before? But I traveled so much. I knew it was somewhere in the Chicagoland area, but I just couldn't land it. And thank God for you, for knowing how to come over and just in your gentlemanly way, just say, hey, I've seen you before. I've captured you before somewhere. And then we figured out what the commonality was. So I'm grateful to be a guest on the show. And I'm grateful to share my life because this woman right here, born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Dr. Sheri has been through some stuff. And
we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And hopefully that what I've gone through, I know that God not only was doing it to build my character, but he mainly was doing it so that I can be a blessing to others. Here's an opportunity to do so.
Well, he created you, and then he shaped you and made you And now we have something to share. And when you share what you shared today, people are going to be inspired, enlightened, and they're going to feel hope, because there are many people who are stuck where they are and they don't know how to go. They need somebody that can pull that lever and put them in drive. You've got people who are almost destroyed from the past and they need repair.
So true.
And you've got people right now that are going to enter into dark moments in their life, and they're going to need an anchor. They're going to need a counselor,
Yes.
a guide. So you have the marvelous opportunity in your ministry today to speak to the hearts of all those people.
Okay.
And I'm so glad that it could happen at WVTC Radio. And I'm going to tell you, people are listening to this show. I don't know if I told you, but I'm just going to give the station. This isn't Don Barge or the D Barge. This is just the fact and the truth. This station just won the Stella Award. We just won. I'm on the team. You know what I'm saying? I'm on the team. We won the Stella Award. So I'm gonna have Don Jackson here. But the bottom line is, God knows exactly what he's doing when we don't.
Absolutely.
So let's move forward. I want you to talk about your being born, growing up, and get to where we are. Right?
Yeah. As I said before, I was born on the south side of Chicago, born and raised. Was in a family, mom and dad, and 3 other siblings. And, we used to have the joke. My mom used to say, "Girl, I heard you say to somebody that we're poor." Don't say that. We're not poor.
Right.
No, she came back and said, "Girl, we poor right now." We can't afford that extra O and a R. We poor right now. We're not going to always be this way. We may be poor when it comes to the dollars, but we were never poor in spirit, right? And so the love of God has always been present in our lives. The love of the Lord has always been present in our lives. So there is a struggle. There's a struggle when you have 2 grown people and 4 children all sharing one chicken. So, somebody was getting it back in the neck, but we grew up tight. We grew up close because those scarce times allowed us to appreciate one another, allowed us to, if I was looking a little hungrier than normal, having an older brother that would slip you a piece of his wing, to make sure you had enough to eat. So we were a tight-knit family. We had some issues, but my parents certainly were not perfect. But they brought us up and they set an example for us. With each blow we got, they set the example of how to move past it. And so I made up in my mind. I was 2 years old when I decided that I wanted to be a physician.
2 years old?
2 years old. I had this thing where I would always climb in bed with my parents and watch Marcus Welby. Okay, I didn't have enough contemplation of the show. I just remembered there was a man who wore a white jacket and he seemed to make people feel better. He seemed to solve the problems. And that was what I saw I wanted to do. And my parents tell me that they were in the process of watching the show. And I stood up in the bed and I said, "I know what I want to be." So, they're encouraging parents. They said, "Well, what is it?" And I said, "I want to be a doctor." So then my mom said, "Baby, why do you want to be a doctor?" I said, "Well, I want to help people." Oh, my parents were like, "Yes, our baby wants to help people." And then I came back with this one. I don't know how in the world at 2 years old, I knew to say this. And I said, "And I want to make a lot of money." Now, I don't know if I was picking up on whatever Marcus Welby, wherever he lived or whatever he drove, that it seemed to be that he seemed to have more than us. But I said that, and even though in life, that really was not what drove me, because, in medical school, you have so much debt from education until the idea of making money. The debt you incur, those are 30-year loans, just like mortgages. So
and you didn't have a concept of money in high school.
I did
anyway,
not. Exactly. So, but God blessed. I went to, I was educated in the Chicago public school system, and I went to college at Northwestern, graduated with honors. Then I was awarded a full academic scholarship to Loyola Stritch School of Medicine, finished medical school there. I did 1.5 years of neurology residency. And then I was pregnant with my second child because I got married about a week before I started my senior year of college.
Wow.
I was so young. I was only 20. He was 21 going on 22. We had no business getting married that young. But, when you grow up in the church, you hear the scriptures, it's better to marry than to burn. Yeah, you want to do it right. So we got married, but God bless, I did not have any children until after I finished medical school. So now I'm in my residency. I have one child, pregnant with the other one, having complications, and I needed to take time off because my obstetrician said, you can either go on and finish your residency and finish on time, or put your child and your own life at risk, but you can't have them both. That was hard for me because I never took any gaps. Because I knew what I wanted to do it too. So my parents told me, you better do twice as well with twice as little if you want to compete and make it in to that field. It's a white male dominated profession.
Absolutely.
And so I had to stay geared up, but I didn't miss any time. I did all of the volunteering. I worked over the summer. I volunteered at Michael Reese Hospital. I volunteered at Mercy Hospital. I was in the Robert Wood Johnson's program. I did all of that. So I was used to go, go, go. And then now, and even with the birth of my first child, I only missed 2 weeks of work or school, residency. I only missed 2 weeks. So I really didn't miss anything because I finished everything on time. But now to have the obstetrician say to me, you have a choice to make. Now there has to be a gap in my education and my career path because my child and the health of my child was way more important than my profession in that moment. So I took a leave of absence. But while I was at home, I got bored real quick because I was used to just go, go, go. And even though I had time to spend with my oldest child who was going on 2, I still needed to put my hands in medicine. I still needed to lay hands on people and do that healing. So I called my obstetrician and I said, listen, if I did some what we call locum tenens work, that's as needed work. You can work as a physician and then maybe they need an extra doctor in an emergency room somewhere. Maybe they need a doctor to cover a clinic, for a period of time. I asked her, I said, if I did that, could I get back into doing something? Plus, with me taking a leave of absence, it took away the salary that I was making as a resident. That wasn't a lot, but it was certainly helping to pay the mortgage and the bills. So she said, Sheri, you could get into something, but it only can be 9 to 5. There are no weekends. There were no call. You get in, you get out, you come home, you put your feet up, you relax. So I was able to find a locum tenens job that did just that. But it turned out to be what they call occupational medicine clinics. I didn't know what an occupational medicine clinic was. I had never heard of it, even in medical school. I've heard of occupational therapy, but not occupational medicine. So basically I was going in, I was doing pre-placement physicals and taking care of injuries, lacerations, burns, things people got things in their eye, they had a back injury. And it was, instead of thinking about where the lesion is in the brain, it was thinking about, well, what at work could have caused this injury? And so now how can I go back to the employer and have them make changes so that their employees don't continue to get injured or don't continue to come in and always develop a headache because of fumes that are not appropriately taken out of the workspace. So I got intrigued. I moonlighted in it for 8 months. And then I realized I didn't want to go back to neurology. Neurology was going to require me to take call every third night. Once I finished residency, I was going to have to be on staff, probably at least 2 to 3 different hospitals to make a decent living. And then my weekends would be taken up. But occupational medicine, on the other hand, I could go to clinic. I could be a medical director. I could work 9 to 5, no weekends. And the only time I would get called in is if one of the employers that used our facility, if there was a major injury or death on the scene and they needed a doctor to show up. So I switched my fields. So instead of going back to neurology, I went into occupational medicine, found that the University of Illinois had an occupational medicine program. I interviewed way off sequence. Residency started in July. I was due to go back to neurology in January. So I interviewed for my position in the OcMed residency that October. Got accepted immediately. But then the program director said, okay, well, you have time to pick out your courses because you had to get your master's in public health as part of your residency. You have time to pick out your courses because things don't start till July. Whoa. I had already missed a year. And I don't like taking breaks. So I told him there's no way in the world I'm going to give up 6 more months of my life. If I'm in the program, I'm starting in January. He said, but you have to get your master's. Courses are only offered certain semesters, spring semester, summer, and fall. So he says, if you take it in spring, you're probably going to be taking like 5 courses because that's when the courses are offered. I said, all right, I'll take the 5 courses. God came in because at that point I had 2 small children. Started a new residency where you got to get to know all new attending physicians and other people that are fellow residents. And now I was going back to school for their first year. I was going back to school and having to do clinical rotations. I hadn't been in school since medical school. Now I got to do it with 2 small children. God came in because every course that I took, I got nothing less than an A. I graduated, received my master's in public health in 1 year with a perfect 5.0 GPA.
Beautiful.
That was nothing but staying focused, depending on God, because I could not do it on my own. But I thank God for that foundation that my parents had given me way back when. That determination to push through even when you're tired. That knowledge to know, hey, you know what? Pushing through right now won't be the wisest thing because I'm not going to learn or retain anything. I need to take a nap. I need to refuel. I need to read my word. I need to listen to some music that'll get me upbeat. Take my break. Then now when I pour back in, I can now retain. I can now be present when I'm playing with my children. So all of those tools helped me to be successful. So I came through my ACME residency. I have served as the Associate Area Medical Director for the United States Postal Service. I've served as the Medical Director with Integra Health System. I have been the Global Medical Director of Medical Operations for Hospira. I was the Program Medical Director for all of the Occupational Health and Employee Health departments for Advocate Health System, the largest healthcare system in Illinois. And I was living life. I was practicing. I now was overseeing 22 different facilities. And this was about in probably, I would say, January 2007. I'm overseeing all of these facilities, right? Mm-hmm. I and my first husband divorced, but we were co-parenting beautifully with our 2 daughters. And life was good, except for my mom at that time was in the end stages of her life. She had a condition called sarcoidosis. Mm-hmm. So for the last 3 years of her life, she was suffering and she was ready to die. And I've said this a number of times. I was as ready as a child could be to let their mom go until October 1st, 2008. And that's when I found a mass in my right breast. It was cancer. And my treatment consisted of a partial mastectomy, a level 1 lymph node dissection where they removed 16 lymph nodes, 3 were positive for cancer, 15 rounds of chemotherapy, and 33 treatments of radiation. It was a very difficult time. And during my chemo, only 3 chemo treatments in, my mom died. I was floored at that point, not devastated at that point, but I was floored because I had had time to get prepared for my mom's transition. But it was something about after I got diagnosed that I just felt like, oh, okay, I know it's hard for her to hang on, but God wouldn't take her now, not now. And it's interesting that when I shared my diagnosis with my mom, we both took note that for years, during those last 3 years, every major holiday we would have or some event, my mom would say, well, I don't know why the Lord still has me here. I don't know. We'll just say, Mama, because he ain't ready yet. We need you a little bit more. When I told her my diagnosis, she said, that's why I'm here. Because no baby should ever get that diagnosis without a mommy. Mm-hmm. And she said, even though I can't do anything, your mommy is here. Needless to say, I broke down because the time when I'm telling her about my diagnosis, she's in inpatient hospice. So we're in her hospice room. And I'm sharing this with her. I know of her imminent time for her mortality to pass on and a transition. But at the same time, I'm now questioning mine because I don't know if I'm going to live through this or not. I don't know if who's going to go first, really, at this point. And my mom died while I was going through chemo. And it was a blow. It was a blow because I now was experiencing grieving the loss of my marriage, the loss of half my right breast, the loss of my hair because of chemo, and the loss of my mom. And it was a lot, and I would share with everyone. I did not initially grieve the way I should have. I didn't grieve properly because I pushed and I pressed and I got through because I had 2 children I needed to raise. I was the executor of my mom's estate. I had things to do. I needed to now ensure that my dad was good. I had clinics that I needed to run. I just had to get through. And I found myself, I'm now back at work. I only missed 3 days of work throughout my entire treatment. Only missed 3 days. And those were the 3 days that I was in the hospital for surgery. Other than that, I'm working from home. I get my chemo. I come back. I'm back to work. And then suddenly, 2 years later, it's now in 2010. And I'm realizing that I'm finding it difficult for me to plan ahead, to see a future for myself.
Right.
I'm trying to, someone would ask me, hey, Sheri, you want to take a trip? We're going to the Caribbean next summer. And I say yes, and I want to do it, but I couldn't visualize myself there. That seemed like a major choice that I had to make, because if I said yes, I need somebody to watch the kids. I need to find the money to go. I need to take the time off from work. It seemed like a lot of planning that I couldn't wrap my head around. And that was when I realized I had failed to develop the right coping mechanisms. By just pressing through, I really wasn't dealing and recovering from my trauma, because I wasn't acknowledging that I wasn't fine. I wasn't acknowledging that I wasn't fine to myself and to others. And although those are words that I didn't want to say, and maybe people didn't want to hear, it is necessary in order for you to move forward. So I realized I needed to properly grieve all of my losses, because it was impacting my grief, and not dealing with it properly was impacting my ability to make the right decisions, or to make any decision at all. And you choose not to make a decision, that really is a decision.
It's a decision.
It's a decision. And so now I put myself into counseling. And first counselor I went to was just not charismatic enough for me. And I'm telling you, guys, if you have the ability to get a counselor, don't feel like you're stuck. If they're not moving you, find another one, because this is some serious business. Mental health issues are real. And at that time, I was in a major depression, even though I was moving along. Just like you can have functioning alcoholics, you can have functioning people that are majorly depressed, but they're not making necessarily the right decisions for themselves, their family, and or the organization with which they work. So I put myself in counseling deep. And for a year, I was in counseling, and I was able to grieve. I was able to develop those coping mechanisms. Now I was able to envision my life and envision the future. But in that envisioning, lymphedema set in. Now, lymphedema is a complication where 1 in 3 at-risk cancer patients will develop this disease in their lifetime. And it usually shows up, about 75% of the cases show up within the first 3 years after treatment. And it occurs because your lymph nodes are part of your immune system, and they control swelling and micro trauma. So when we walk around, we're carrying groceries, we're exercising, we're doing all of that. Micro trauma is occurring, and swelling occurs. Sometimes you'll notice it because you get home and your ring is a little too tight. Or you notice when you're taking off your shoes, ladies, you're wearing your shoes, they get a little tight, you take them off and you think you're gonna put them back on again. And it's like, oh, why did I do that? Because the swelling is even more. But you notice that at night when you go to sleep, you lay down, the body recovers. Those lymph nodes work to deal with that micro trauma. Well, when they don't work anymore, that swelling continues to build and build and build. It has nowhere to go because the lymph nodes don't function. So I was left with severe swelling in my right arm, hand, and fingers, and I'm right-handed. And it left me disabled from performing the clinical functions of my job as a physician. So after 16 years of practicing, I now was physically disabled from performing the clinical functions of my job. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to be a doctor ever since I was 2 years old, but I now had 2 children that wanted and needed to go to college. And I had to figure something out, because they had to eat, I had to eat. And I just decided that I wouldn't sweat the small stuff. I couldn't just bring myself to do a job, whether it required an MD or not, to just do a job, just to do it, just to get paid. So I was in a bind because it was work that I could do administratively, but it wasn't joyful. It was just a check. And with everything I had been through, with everything I had lost, I couldn't just do anything. It had to bring me joy. And I found that sharing my story was what brought me joy. And God allowed over the years for me to turn that around and create S. Phillips Consulting, which is a healthcare consulting firm. I serve as a chief medical officer for clients, or I may come in and do training on a drug-free workplace, or training with physician leaders, doing training with women entrepreneurs, that type of thing. And then I went on to become a certified speaking professional. The National Speakers Association, that's the highest designation that they award. And there are less than 600 of us in the world. And so God allowed me now to heal, but not necessarily with the laying on of hands. Sometimes I do it, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but now with my tongue, with my mouth, with my words,
strongest muscle in the body.
Hey, you better come on now. You better come on now. And so I'm blessed now to be able to impact individuals in that way. And sometimes I come in with these are my compression garments. These are the garments that I should be wearing, y'all, on here. But I wanted to just demonstrate that I bling mine out on purpose. One, my nickname, y'all, since medical school is Diva MD.
Okay.
I'm not one of them nasty divas, though.
Not the ones that show on TV.
Exactly. No. I'm not angry or nothing like that. I think I'm all that. But I am a diva in the sense that, I mean, my mom was a seamstress and tailor. Everything was always well put together. But I bling it out, one, because I figured if I got to wear it, I might as well be cute. But I also bling it out because it brings awareness. People see it and they look at it and they think that I'm making a fashion statement.
That's what I
can't tell you how many individuals said, "Oh, I want one of those." And if I wear it with a t-shirt and I just have this on, they said, "Girl, where did you get that one-arm t-shirt?" Oh, you rocking, right? Yeah. And I remember getting caught in Las Vegas and they thought that it was from a nearby boutique. And this lady said to me, "I gotta have one." And I told her, baby, no, you ain't got to have one of these because there's a story that comes behind one of these. But then it allows me to talk about breast cancer, bring up breast cancer awareness, educate them, then tell people about this complication that you can get. And then now when I talk to breast cancer patients and survivors that are not even aware that lymphedema is a risk factor, now I share with them that it's a risk factor and now share with them ways that they could prevent the chronic debilitating lymphedema that I have, because they can now be a part of a monitoring program that detects it in its early reversible stages. So God has allowed me to take an onslaught of trials that would make any woman or man reel in defeat. But my emotional ride through a number of life-threatening circumstances drove me from self-examination to self-discovery, leaving me face to face with myself, my God, and my power.
That is truly magnificent. And that's not even a good enough word. It appears to me that early in your life, actually when you were born and before that, God was bringing you into this creation to prepare you for something very, very special. And what I've listened to and what we've been overwhelmed by with your story is that he's been preparing you the whole time up to this moment that we're talking, and he's not finished. So with all the accomplishments that you've made through all the controversy and the negative, we can call it, impacts that you've had, the war, the struggle that you've made, you've gone to war with the beast.
Yes, I have.
And in your struggle, God has lifted you and taken you to a step higher with each one of them.
Yes, he has.
There's a song that I'm going to ask you. You don't have to sing it if you don't want to. I know you could sing. There's a song that I want you to hear. You might have already heard it. Mm-hmm. And it's from a dear friend of mine who passed away, he grew up under me. Mm-hmm. His name is Daryl Coley.
Okay. Yes, I've heard the name.
Daryl Coley, gospel artist. Mm-hmm. He had a number of songs that he wrote, but there's one that actually fastens to and rides with your story and your life. The name of the song is He's preparing me. The song gives me chills to think about it, but it does even more than that, to realize the wonder in the work of a woman who was as powerful as you. And that power is presence. The people that you helped on your journey, it is truly amazing. But God put you in the position where you needed help.
Absolutely.
That will remain I think, a main ingredient to humility.
Oh my goodness.
When you're in need.
Absolutely.
Because when you're in need, you're calling out, not in.
Yes. Yes.
But God is fixing. We had a conversation yesterday when we did a pre-taping, and we were talking about, can you be God-giving? No, you can't.
No, it's impossible.
But you know what?
What?
I told the person that was on the interview, try. Now, why would you be the one that would get that? You know what? I'm not surprised at all. Try to be them giving and see what happens.
That's right.
Because you've tried.
Yes.
You've tried to give the master all. And this is how he delivers us.
Absolutely.
And it's in his time, by his route, for his purpose, divinely, that we are.
Absolutely.
And we will be.
Absolutely.
Boy, I'm so glad I hooked back up with you.
You have no idea how prophetic that sharing that song with me is. He's preparing me, because I just had a friend that come by a few days ago. And, you know, I told you about my past and a little bit about my present, but if you picked up, I said that when I divorced my first husband. And so 5 years after my first husband and I split, I married again. And I married someone that I went to high school, college, and med school with. So it wasn't that I didn't know them. We had never been in a relationship before, but it was somebody that I knew. And so after 8 years of marriage, that marriage ended. I was finding myself getting lost, too much gaslighting, too much dimming my light, too much competition, too much. And so to keep peace in my home, I would diminish me. And it's funny because nobody else around me would share that they saw me losing me or diminishing me. They just supported me because it was a choice that I had made. But when I made up in my mind, I cannot diminish me, I didn't think about, per se, my children. I didn't think about my dad. I didn't think about my friends. I didn't even think about my audience and my constituency, the people that are blessed with my nonprofit. Who I thought about that I would be disappointing the most in losing me was God. Because he allowed me to live throughout the breast cancer, the potentially life-threatening heart defect that I found out that I had, grieving my mom, grieving the loss of my career. He's blessed me with all of that, and he's not done with me yet. And I knew that he wasn't done with me, but I was dimming my personality, which God uses as part of my ministry. And so I made up in my mind, I can't do it. I got to go. I got to let go. But you know, it's not easy letting go, especially at this time in your life when you anticipate that you would be spending this portion of your life, the latter half of your life, differently. So again, I had to go through another grieving process, grieving the loss of an ideal, grieving the loss of a partner, grieving the loss of this family structure that I thought we would have. And the friend that came over to see me a couple of days ago said, Sheri, all I'm telling you is right now, with the way you coming through this right now, God is preparing your testimony. And I said, honey, I got to a place where, you know, sometimes, you know, you look at the settlement agreement and you feel like they're taking or you're giving up something. And I told her, God, I heard his voice clearly in my ear. I've only heard the voice of the Lord twice in my life. Well, I can tell you definitively, I heard these words. The first one was to live today, and I'll expound on that later. But this time he said, Sheri, I can't bless you unless you're willing to let go. So now I don't look at it as taking or giving up. I'm simply letting go for what God has in store for me. Talk about double for your trouble. Talk about the people that I will now be able to bless and minister to, because people are still watching me. Many people still had no idea what I was going through. They will in due time know.
Still a story.
Still a story. And now I'm going to be impacting on a different level, on a more intimate, personal level from a relationship standpoint, so that other women and other men can see that, yes, you can have your mindset and think that things are great. People can look at you and say, power couple, yes. But if the enemy comes in, both people, you have to have the same mindset. Pray together. Let God be that third strand in that rope to keep you together. If either one of you take God out, it's just not going to work. And for me, you can't take God out. You take God out, you're removing me because he lives in me. Christ lives in me. God's light shines through me. So if you tell me you got enough God, I can't be a part of that because I will never have enough for him. Even in eternity, when we're praising and worshiping him, having enough of him is not even possible. So God is preparing me. My brand new life, another new testimony. Baby, God is good. He is good.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
You know, you remind me the liquid, life-giving, whatever you want to call it, that we need to live is water.
Yes.
You know, I remember when I was living in California when we had what's called a shortage of water, and you could only take. It got down to where you could only take a shower once every 2 days. I never obeyed that, but we were playing basketball and stuff. You know.
Oh yeah.
So the bottom line is the devil tried his best to convince us that the Lord of all the worlds, because it's more than one world here.
Absolutely.
There's the world of politics. There's the world of government. There's the world of finance. There's the world of education.
Yes.
There's a world of law. There's so many worlds.
Yes.
But when you know the Lord of all the worlds,
Yes.
that's the one that created us and the water.
Correct.
And when he created the water, he did that in advance because he knew that 75% of our body was liquid. So we would have to have a replenishment all the time. So he created enough water and replaced it and replenished it so that it will never, ever run short.
That's right.
Or disappear.
That's right.
So for somebody to tell me there's a shortage of water, you will lie. You're lying. It doesn't exist. There's no shortage of food. There's grapes and oranges and grapefruits and apples and bananas everywhere. They're not just in Germany or in Tahiti or in the Isles of Pacific, South and Central America. They're here in the United States. So food and water is a forever thing.
Correct.
And so I look at that like what you're doing now. You started out on a physical level and then you went to metaphysical.
Yeah.
So now what you're able to do, what I'm listening to you say, is that many of the illnesses that you've been helping to treat for people and helping to counsel them to get through, the very word from the sword that divides right from wrong will be the first weapon of the war to use, which could annihilate a lot of the physical stuff from even taking place.
Absolutely.
Now, you don't have to be a doctor to understand that.
Nope.
But you sure are doing something magnificent in your work. A couple of thoughts came. That's why I wrote a few things down. One is that God is a God of substance. And what is he going to do with the substance he has? If he creates something and collects something, he has to deposit it somewhere.
He does.
So he has some very rich deposits, and those deposits have gone into you. We're talking about you today. Okay? The deposits that are so rich that he's implanted in you, you can't get rid of. All you can do is respond.
There you go.
You respond.
Absolutely.
Responding and distributing. You become a spiritual distributor of truth, wealth, health, and happiness out of pain.
Yes.
The ordinance of pain was absolutely necessary.
It is.
The greatest things in life, we don't think of, I heard this before, we don't think of an ant having pain.
No, we don't.
We don't think of a flower, a tulip, a daisy, a rose having pain. But everything that has life has pain. It's unknown to us. But we
Correct.
know our pain,
We know our pain
and we
real
know our
good.
struggle.
Yes.
But that song, it just rang like a bell as you were talking. That song, I think, probably could be a theme song for your life.
I love it.
He is,
Preparing
Daryl Coley
me.
didn't say that he was preparing me or he has been preparing. He said he is.
That's
That's
a process.
present.
That's present, and that to me signals continuing. Don't expect your preparation to have been finished, because by that time you finished the race, right?
That's right.
At that point you finished the race.
Mhm.
So to say he is preparing me as he's getting me through this, he's preparing me for something else. It is always in preparation because there's too much kingdom work that needs to be done.
Too much.
Too much. So God is preparing me. He's allowed me, not only now this will be an addition to my former testimony, but I'm also able now with my nonprofit, with the lymphedema. I'm traveling around. I'm seeing so many patients out there not treating their lymphedema, not knowing what their lymphedema is. And even in that pain, in taking away my career, I just thought about, what if there are other women out here? And I know that they are. They had to give up their career too. Men too, because men get breast cancer as well. But the majority of people that I saw living with lymphedema were women. And I know that I wasn't the only one. Where do we go to talk, to share about the psychosocial impacts of this disease, the embarrassment of having to put on this garment every single day and a different type of garment at night, the financial responsibility of having to buy new clothes because now, I can fit in my left arm, but this won't fit in my right. I have to get things that have a stretch to them because I can't wear anything that's tight because it's not going to fit on this arm. That financial responsibility. You've lost your job. So now you got to buy new clothes, but you don't have a job.
Right.
You would normally do a lot of homemade cooking, from scratch for your kids. Well, now your arm and your hand is too heavy. You dropping the spoons. It's too painful. So you can't do that. So now you're going to the quick meals, the ready prepared
Which
meal.
is really what you don't need.
Which is really what you don't need.
Right.
So you got all of this that you're dealing with, but everybody's telling you, girl, thank God you will survive. Girl, it's just some swelling. No, it is not. It has changed my life. And I'm going to have to live with this disease for the rest of my life. Even if my cancer never comes back, I got to live with this disease. So when I was going out and looking for resources to help me kind of deal with this, because this is another process that you need to grieve. You cannot just push past it and get over it. This has completely changed my life. So when I saw that the resources weren't out there, I created my own. Started the Live Today Foundation. And the reason it's called Live Today, because that first time I told you that I heard God speak in my ears, it was after my diagnosis, and I heard God say, it was actually after my treatment, live.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, okay, well, Lord, I'm doing that. I thought I was going to die when I was going through the heart stuff, and I didn't think I was going to make it through the chemo, and bearing my mom like to just stop my heart right there. Clearly, I'm live. Okay, Lord, live. But then as I began to pray over the next couple of weeks, because I'm like, Lord, what do you mean by live? What am I supposed to do? And he shared with me this. It just came to me. I took pen to paper. I was hearing something in my head. I grabbed pen to paper, and it came out like this. Love myself and others. Inspire those around me. Voice my dreams and ambitions, and enjoy life. Live today and every day. And so Live Today has become my trademark motto. Yeah, it's trademark. I'm just letting you know. You can say it, but you better say it was Dr. Sheri.
That's right.
It's trademark, okay?
One, right? Your words.
Exactly.
Right.
But I decided that when it was time for me to start my nonprofit, I couldn't come up with another name. I was trying to think of, something with lymphedema in it, blah, 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 blah. And the Lord said, no, it's Live Today, because you are helping these individuals live today. People will, when you get past your treatment and they think, okay, you're done with your treatment, they forget about, they don't want to talk to you about cancer anymore because they figure you don't want to talk about it. And really, we don't. But when you have a complication that's a result of your cancer diagnosis stays with you. I remember it every time I put these garments on. So now you have nobody that's talking to you. You talking to them, and they're telling you it's just some swelling. So you had nobody to really express these concerns with. So I started the Live Today Foundation to do 3 things: educate physicians and other healthcare practitioners on how to properly diagnose lymphedema, don't call it just some swelling, and then make them aware of the psychosocial impacts of lymphedema, the embarrassment, the intimacy issues, the financial issues, so that they could connect patients with the proper resources in their community to help them. 2, educate patients about what they have, the importance of treatment, going to a proper physical therapist that's trained in lymphedema, doing manual lymphatic drainage yourself before you put on your garments and wearing your garments daily. Then number 3, providing a set of free compression garments to under-resourced cancer patients and survivors living with lymphedema. And now the 4th goal, because of new technology that's available now to detect it in its early stages, now we're on a campaign. It's called the Lymphedema Can't Ruin My Survivorship campaign. And that's where I come in and I share, guys, you need to get and be a part of a lymphedema prevention care plan. So you need to ask your cancer care team, do you have a lymphedema prevention program? What do you do to monitor for early signs of lymphedema? If you go out to the website, www.live-today.org, if you click on the lymphedema prevention tab, it actually has 2 PDFs that you can actually print out and take to your doctor at the next visit. That one is going to tell them the statistics of lymphedema. So if somebody's telling you it's 1 to 2%, they are lying. It's way more than that. But then 2, the questions that you need to ask them already printed out. Because now, if you're in a monitoring program where you get monitored for the first 3 months of that first year that you have been diagnosed, and then every 6 months for the next 2 years after that, you can actually, from your baseline, if this level comes off, and when I say monitor, you step on something that looks like a scale, in 30 seconds, your intracellular fluid or an LDEX score is red. That's it, you go home. But the clinician keeps monitoring this score. And then when that score increases and causes what we call a trigger, we put you in compression garments for 4 weeks, wear them 12 hours a day. It redistributes the lymph in your body and redirects it to go to the areas that are working. If you don't catch it early, you lose the opportunity and these become permanently blocked. So now you can wear a compression garment that will open up the other areas and allow your limb to properly train as it needs to. 95% of individuals who have gone through a proper lymphedema prevention program and have gotten measured on this device do not go on to develop chronic debilitating lymphedema. So that's my 4th goal. That's part of my future, getting it out there so that now we're still working on the research and, breast cancer and any kind of cancer and coming up with cures and all of that. I'm trying to help people live the best survivorship possible, going through your grieving, learning how to cope, sharing your story so you can be a blessing to somebody else, and doing what you can in your survivorship journey to prevent developing chronic diseases that you would have to live with for the rest of your life.
Wow, that's a lot. But it's simple.
It really
when you're
is.
in the work mode. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Lymphedema, let's just talk about that one, because that's the last thing, a residue that you talked about that exists. Does that make you feel uncomfortable sometimes?
Yes, very much so. There are times when, especially when I travel, when I'll do my manual lymphatic drainage in the hotel room or what have you, I can't get the swelling down enough. So when I put on the garment, I have my glove on, you can still see my fingers puffing through, they may be purple. And then I'll go to a cocktail party. And now I got this garment on and I'm trying to reach for the meatballs, because I want the past hors d'oeuvres too,
right.
But my hand can't quite grab it quite right. And there have been times I've had sent food flying on the floor. Some other people can hold their plate of food and their drink, their little cocktail, their little wine. I cannot do that. I only have one hand. Or I remember just thinking to myself, what am I going to do when I get into a relationship with someone where you get to that intimacy level? And I now have this oven mitt that I have to wear at night to control my lymphedema. You just can't look cute putting on little cutie pajamas and then you put on this big oven mitt and then lay down and go to bed and say, oh, okay. It just, in every aspect of your life, it stands out. The only time I don't feel uncomfortable is when the swelling is really good. Even today, my hand is swollen. I got a couple of scratches on my finger that I'm concerned about because with lymphedema, you got to be careful of little scratches and burns because it can get infected, cause an infection of your skin, spread to your subcutaneous tissues, get into your blood, and cause a systemic infection. So I have to be extra careful. But the only times when I'm not is when people really can't see my hand a lot. You know, I can keep my hand down here, but it's always present on my mind, always. So I turn it and make it a conversation piece where I can bring help to somebody else. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm one of those ones, the technology wasn't available when I was diagnosed. I have this for the rest of my life. This is part of who I am, just like Christ is. So I flip it and make it for the better.
You know, when we come into this world, I believe my father was a pastor too, and he taught us about the devil. I am right now a firm believer that the devil exists.
Oh, absolutely.
Just as God exists.
Absolutely.
So the question becomes, well, okay, well then where is the devil? He's right here. He ain't going nowhere. God is right here. So the bottom line is, when you were talking, I just thought of something. Lymphedema has made you uncomfortable at various different times.
It has.
But because of the fight in you and because of the soldier that you are at war, you also have made lymphedema very uncomfortable in you.
I love it.
The more uncomfortable that it becomes in you is caused by the work that you're doing outside of you, because the work that you're spreading through people is all coming back to you. You give it, you receive it.
Yes.
But you can't give it unless you already have it.
There you go.
So that's why God gave it to you.
Yep, absolutely.
So he's healing people mentally, spiritually, and physically in the presence of your work.
Yeah.
And because of it.
Yeah. He's getting the glory out of my life.
That's why you had to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I wouldn't be shocked if lymphedema left, and it would be the miracle of what happens in the war between good and evil. Because God is a God of, there's nothing impossible.
Nothing.
But right now, just looking at you and hearing your voice and sharing what we do, I don't see it nowhere. Honestly, I mean, I'm real.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
You're a doctor.
Yes.
Not. But the bottom line is how you've approached this for people who haven't had it as bad as you.
Yeah.
It's going to, man, they're going to feel so empowered. And the ones that have had it worse, if there is a worse, they're going to diminish the worst. So you're good for all of it. It doesn't matter where they are and where you are. You just keep working.
Yes.
And a lot of people are being blessed, and that's what you're here for.
Thank you.
God brought you into the world to be a blessing.
He did.
And you're absolutely shining as people are being blessed. But I think the person in your life that it has blessed more than anybody is you.
You better preach it now.
Make you a blessing to yourself, because when you leave this show and you go home, when you leave your big meetings where you mesmerize people with how God is working, not only in you, but how he's preparing them. When you go home, it's just you.
That's right.
Right?
Just me.
And it's those moments that define you.
Yes.
Not the moments that you're here.
Not at all.
What you say to yourself is so much more important than what you say to anybody else.
Yes.
Because you only produce from within.
From within.
Internally to get to the external.
Exactly right.
You're fun. But there's some people that need to meet you, and you need to meet. And I want to introduce you to some of them that I know.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
What would you like to say to close this show? And I just want to make sure that I know you won't forget, because I'm gonna see you in a couple of days. But this song, oh my goodness, I can't help it. It's an emotional song to hear every single time.
Every single time.
Not just because he's my friend, he's gone now, he passed away.
He did.
But I've been knowing him since he was 17.
Wow. Well, I can tell you, I'm gonna listen to that song.
He's preparing me
as I'm heading home, and I will leave this as God is preparing me. He's preparing you. I believe in divine intervention. I didn't come here simply because I had the availability on my schedule today. I wasn't invited here today simply because he needed somebody else to interview. It was a divine connection. And so those that are watching this and listening to this, if there is something that impacted you, that touched you, grab it, feed it, go into your word, allow it to minister to you and to change you. We are in a time and space where time is flying by. I don't know about you, but the summer is gone. I can wake up at 5 o'clock and say, okay, I don't have to get up till 6:30, and literally turn around and look at my phone and say, it's already 6:24. What is going on? We need to run and redeem the time. So I pray that my testimony and what I have shared has been a blessing to you. But I want everyone under the sound of my voice to make this commitment to live today and every day. Wake up in the morning and say, I choose to live. And then take that live. Choose the L, love yourself and others. Choose the I, inspire those around you. Choose the V, voice your dreams and ambitions. And or E, you got to do that every day. Enjoy life. Pick one of them. Make it your vow that you're going to do it that day, and watch God pour into you, because you're going to be pouring out into others.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to the powerful prophetic voice and an angel that was sent to us by God for our healing, for our substance, for our future, for our lives. In Dr. Sheri. Dr. Sheri, excuse me.
That's all
I
right.
want to call you something else so many times. But I want you all to remember the things that she said. Pass on this information to people that you know that it could be some help to. And live, like she said. Live and come back in your life next Wednesday to see this show, the Barge Show, at WVTC Radio, Chicago, Gospel. Have a great week, and may God bless you.
God bless.
God. Bye-bye.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ. WVTC.